Hello YouTube. This is a video about tent pegs or tent stakes, depending on how you refer to it. I keep mine in a just a small, like a little lunch wrapper plastic bag, and then I cinch it down with a little rubber band. That's just how I carry it in my packs. I just have this 4-pack here that I keep in one of my packs that I was going through, and I thought, I may do a small review on these and some uses other than just using them for tent stakes. The ones that I use have a kind of more of a blunted tip. You could sharpen these, obviously, and they have a hook on the end. I prefer these style that's all one piece, single construction, over the ones that have the plastic ends or the ones made out of plastic. You can get steel, and you can get titanium, and you can get, like I said, various types of polymer mixes for your tent stakes. I prefer the aluminum, and this is some type of, I'm not sure if it's aircraft aluminum, but it's very high tensile strength aluminum. Excellent item. Very strong. Don't think I could bend it if I wanted to. And I carry 4 of these, obviously. And mainly this is for your shelter. At least this is what I mainly carry it for. But what I've found over the years is that there are many uses for these items. So obviously we have these for tents to stake them at a slight angle to provide leverage and support for our structure, so that if there's a high wind in particular, the wind doesn't compromise our shelter, especially when we're sleeping. Or if we're inside the tent, things won't be moved and shifted so that we will not be injured. But I do have approximately 30 other uses that I'd like to share with you. The first one would be to secure a tarp or lashings to secure a shelter. It goes hand in hand with the tent stake type of use, but this particular way of using a tarp or lashings typically is going to be taking this tent stake at an angle, putting it in the ground, and then taking cording and attaching the cording to the actual tarp or whatever else the cording is attached to maybe as a makeshift debris shelter, for all I know. Versus a lot of the tents typically have a grommet or a hole into the base floor, and you go into that. Some tents do have cording that extends out, and you put the tent stake in. But a lot of the new ones that I have don't use a lot of tether cording. They're more streamlined. I think that's where tents are going toward in the future. More streamlined, less support cables and pulleys and various guidelines or guide ropes or strings or cording. I think they're trying to minimize those, and so they're just putting grommet holes on the edge around the perimeter or the edges of the tent, and you stake them in there. And so we have that to secure a tarp or lashings to secure a shelter. And Black Scout Survival, if you go to his channel, he has a very good channel. Black Scout Survival talked about using these in configurations. You could put one in different, basically like a square. And depending on how big the pot is, you can move the actual hook in or out and make a stove or pot platform to cook on. So that's really cool. That's something that I've seen and used before myself. Very handy. I did want to point out, though, that these all 4 of these together, they weigh probably between an ounce to an ounce and a half. Just an unbelievable lightweight. It's literally like feeling like you have maybe 1 or 2 pennies in your hand. I mean, it's a little bit unreal. So I'd advise you to check these out. You can get these like on Amazon or I think even Walmart sometimes. At least years ago they carried these. I don't personally remember where I got these. It may have been Walmart years ago, but I just know these are excellent. The other ones that I would recommend would be the titanium, but you spend a lot more money. I think literally these were just maybe a couple bucks at most years ago. And I think it might have been even in an 8-pack because I have more. But anyways, the next item on the list would be a hunting spear. You can take the ends here, which are fairly blunted, and you could sharpen those with your sharpening stone. Hopefully you would carry at least a small sharpening stone in your pack with you, and you could sharpen that to an edge. There is a little bit of an edge, even though it's blunted, there's just a little bit of a bevel edge on the edge of the tip here, even though the actual tip is blunted down and ground down. I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but it could be sharpened further. So you could use it as an improvised weapon. You could take the hook portion, wrap it around your pointer finger, take your thumb and lock in, and now you have basically a weapon if you had to puncture and thrash with. The next item would be also with the sharpened end, a improvised weapon. We were talking about hunting spears, improvised weapons. So that was that. And then we have the pot or lid lifter. So if you got a real hot instrument or there's a lot of steam coming off your pot, you can hold back on the stem of this stake, and you can take it, and hook it with the lid or the pot handle and lift it off the fire and let it cool. And then when it's safe to handle it, you can do such. You can take 2 of these, and if you have any type of silicone bands or latex tubing, you can slide them on these hooks, and you can make a platform for these 2 to sit into. Maybe it's just a piece of wood that you can hold on to with the hole drilled in, and you slide these 2 down, and they would fit into it at an angle, and then you can use it as a slingshot. So it could be like this, and so with the actual the pieces of tubing in there, and you could fashion a slingshot out of these. These could also be used as a gear hanger and a snare tie down. You could stake this down and just tie the end of your snare to it, so if the animal got snared, it couldn't run off, and so you could actually retain the animal. And you have fishing stakes. So if you wanted to set up a whole bunch of lines or even trout lines and leave the area to do other things, you could stake 1 or 2 of these down, create enough leverage that the fish couldn't just take off with the line itself. So you would have that way to secure your catch until you got back. A target holder, you could set one of these up at a little bit of an angle, put your tin cans and hook them into the hook part here, and shoot all day long. You may hit the stake every once in a while. That's just part of it, but it could be used as a fashioned target holder. The camp security perimeter trip line support. So you could put this down and around your perimeter, especially if you don't have a lot of trees to attach your perimeter line for security. You could have little bells or little tin cans with rocks in them, and this could be help support that guideline that goes around the perimeter of your campsite if you're worried about bears or other people coming up on you in the middle of the night while you sleep. You could also stick one of these down in the ground and actually just take some duct tape and tether your flare to it if you want to do signaling, or if you have to do some type of marking with a flare. This could be a flare holder, or even if you didn't want to stake it in the ground, you could tape the flare to this and get a little bit more further, space from the flare, since they can be very hot and very dangerous. Trail markers, especially if you don't have any trees in your area and you're in a location that you may need to mark an area, but you didn't want to just simply put your marker on the ground, on the bare ground, or try to mark a rock. You could stake this in about halfway and take some your marking trail tape or flags and attach it to your stakes, and there you go. The next one will be a pistol cleaning rod. Depending on what caliber your pistol, it may or may not fit, but this kind of looks like it could easily fit within a 38 or a 9mm. The one, at least this particular stake that I have, it's just a little smaller than a 9mm, and by the time you get your cleaning cloth on there and get it down in the actual barrel, you could probably use this, because the aluminum is probably a lot softer than the alloy steel or the stainless steel that's found in most barrels. So that's an option. Concealment hatch support element. If you wanted to build a cache or a hidden location in the ground, you could dig the ground out and put your items that you want to hide, and then take these tent stakes and push them in, one on each corner like this. And then so here's your hole right here. You put your stuff in the hole, and then you take a piece of cardboard, or even better if you have some plywood, cut to the shape of that opening and put it down there. Put an inch or two of dirt over top of it, and only you would know that, and put some debris on top of that too, leaves and pieces of branches. And so this would actually, these little hooks would be enough to help hold your lid on to your cache or cache. So that's another option. We also have over here, let's see here, flare holder, trail marker, pistol cleaning, concealment hatch. And the next one would be the firearm hanger. So if you have a rifle, you have a sling on your rifle in particular, you can just lightly, especially if you sharpen this just a little bit more, tap this into a soft wood tree, no more than just like an inch or two probably, unless your rifle is very heavy, and have the hook on the upward position, and you could actually hang this if there's no low hanging branches in the areas that you need to hang your rifle. That keeps your rifle off the ground and away from moisture, and it also helps just to have better access to your weapon. The next item would be to use this as a hook tool. So let's just say that there's a crevice here, and you drop something in the crevice. You can take this item and fish it out. Maybe it's your car keys, or maybe it's a small tool that you drop behind something. So you can help hook this out. If it's not long enough, you can just take two of them. And about, within an inch or two of overhang, you can take some good Gorilla tape and, tape that together. And now it's even longer, so you have an extended hook. And you can keep doing that until you have the length you need. The next item would be a meat tenderizer. You can take a blunted or even a sharpened edge and pulverize and tenderize your meat. You can use it as a straight edge. These are fairly straight, so you can use it to draw lines if you're looking at maps and so forth, trying to do navigation. We also have, let's see here, a cord wrap handle. You can wrap this with cord to keep that organized. Use it as a tape spool, a clothes hanger, or a drying tool. So you can have this, once again, just lightly tapped into a tree, a soft wood tree, and you can let your clothes hang if there's no basically any limbs or no low-hanging limbs to hang your clothes off of if you need it to dry. You can also use it as a hat hanger. In camp, you can use it as a non-lethal tool for pressure points, especially if you keep it as a blunt end, or you may even want to make it even more blunted and use it as a blunt non-lethal tool for those uses. A light-duty pry bar. These are pretty strong. You could probably get into a lot of things and pry them open. And so you also have a shoe drying tool. This would be good for if you basically just put this in the ground at an angle and lean up your shoe upside down, so the opening's up here, and let your shoe drip dry if it's wet, or to aerate while you're sleeping, so you have more fresh shoes when you wake up. You can use this as a large fishing hook. If you sharpen the actual hook end here, you could use it for fishing. You could use it as a bear sack leverage stake. So if you want to keep your sack of food up and away from the bears, if you're in that area, you could use this to leverage that up on a tree branch to keep that up there. Some of the last ones is to use it for a lower gill net anchor supports. So you could support your gill net on a creek bed, for example, and also to use this as an ice pick if you sharpen the ends a little more. And for a climbing hand pick. And so, for example, if you're in an icy environment and you need leverage climbing up steep inclines, you could sharpen the end a little more and use it for grip. Or for an emergency egress tool, if you fall into like a lake that is a freezing cold lake that you need to get out of, it's an option. Thanks again for watching. Catch you soon.